All right, this time we're going to try to help out you homeschool parents out there who are using the classical conversations curriculum. We're prepping to teach week 11, which is curved lines. Now, I know the math map can sometimes feel
Yeah.
like kind of a lot. It's very deep. It's very philosophical. It's drawing on these classical math philosophies like the quadrivium. So we're going to break down some of the core math concepts and the philosophical connections that are in this week's material on curved lines to give you the tools that you need to teach it to your students.
The math map opens up with this quote by William McCall. It says, "Straight is the line of duty, curved is the line of beauty. Those shalt ever follow thee."
Ooh.
Straight lines are often very simple, very predictable. But curves represent relationships, connections, the way things influence and interact with each other. Just like the beautiful, sometimes messy, and often curved paths our lives take.
So instead of just drilling equations, this week we're really helping see the beauty and the complexity in these curved lines.
Exactly. And to do that, we need to understand the different families of curved lines that the math map is talking about. Linear, exponential, logarithmic, power, and rational functions.
Okay. Families of functions. That already sounds a little less intimidating than I thought it was going to.
Think of it like your own family. Each member is unique, has their own personality, their own quirks. And so it is with these functions. Each one has its own characteristics and behaviors. They act in different ways.
So let's meet some of these family members. What should we know about exponential and logarithmic functions? And how can we even make these relatable?
Well, exponential functions are all about growth and decay. Things like how populations grow or how the value of something depreciates over time. These can be represented by exponential curves.
Okay, so exponential functions, those are like those runaway bunnies that keep multiplying.
You got it. And logarithmic functions, they are the inverse. They undo the exponential function. They help us solve for exponents. That might sound really abstract, but think about how they're used to model things like pH levels,
Right.
or measuring acidity and alkalinity.
Wow.
And suddenly we're talking about real things. Let's talk about power functions.
Okay.
It's a great way to visually demonstrate the power of small changes.
Yeah. I remember being amazed by that. Just by changing that tiny little exponent, you can change a gentle slope into a steep climb.
Changing one element has a ripple effect on the entire curve.
Okay, so we've got families of functions, each of them with their own personalities. They can model real-world events. What else should we know about these curved lines? I've always found end behavior and limits kind of abstract, even as an adult.
Yeah, those can be kind of tricky. But think about it this way. End behavior is like the final destination of a road trip.
Okay.
It tells us where the graph is headed as x approaches infinity or negative infinity.
Right.
And we can look at the leading term of a polynomial function, and that'll give us the roadmap to where it's going.
Okay, so end behavior is like the big picture destination.
Yes.
What about those limits?
Well, limits are like the pit stops along the way.
Okay.
They describe what the function approaches as x gets closer and closer to a specific value, whether it's a number or infinity.
So end behavior is the overall trend, and limits are those important milestones along the way.
You got it. And by understanding these concepts, we're not just teaching our kids math, but we're helping them develop critical thinking skills that they can apply to life.
Yeah.
They're learning to see patterns, analyze trends, predict outcomes.
Awesome. Before we move on, we have to talk about asymptotes.
Oh,
I always remember those being those lines that tease the curve. They get closer and closer, but they never quite touch.
yes.
It's so frustrating.
Asymptotes. They do seem to have a mind of their own,
They do.
but they represent the limits that the curve can approach but never actually reach.
It's like a game of chase, with the curve forever pursuing this elusive line.
I like that.
So what should we know about these asymptotes?
Well, we have vertical asymptotes, which occur where the function becomes undefined. Often where the denominator of a rational function equals 0, and the graph shoots way up towards positive infinity or dives down towards negative infinity as it approaches that vertical line.
So vertical asymptotes, those are like those sudden dramatic shifts in a journey.
That's a great way to think about it.
What about horizontal asymptotes?
Horizontal asymptotes are all about long-term trends. They describe how the function behaves as x heads towards positive or negative infinity. It's as if the curve settles down after a wild ride and approaches a state of equilibrium.
I'm starting to see how all of these concepts, from types of curves to limits and asymptotes, are painting this really vivid picture of how functions behave. This has been amazing. I feel so much more equipped. We've covered so much already, different families of functions, end behavior, limits, even those fascinating asymptotes. Now I'm ready to dive into some of the more challenging stuff.
Okay.
Rational functions and discontinuities.
Ooh, those are great ones to tackle next. Remember how we talked about functions being like families,
Yeah.
each with their own quirks? Well, rational functions.
Okay.
They're the family members with a little bit of a flair for the dramatic.
Yeah.
They can have these fascinating points called discontinuities, where the function just takes an unexpected turn.
A discontinuity. So like it's going along smoothly and then bam, something unexpected happens.
Think of it like a road trip. You're cruising along, enjoying the scenery, and then suddenly you hit a detour, a roadblock. That's kind of what a discontinuity is like for a function.
So discontinuities are like those plot twists that keep us on the edge of our seats. What kinds of discontinuities can we encounter on this mathematical road trip?
Well, there are three main types: removable discontinuities, jump discontinuities, and infinite discontinuities.
Let's break those down.
Removable discontinuities are like those tiny potholes in the road. They create a little gap in the graph, but you can just kind of smoothly drive right over them. And they're called removable because we can actually often just fill in those holes mathematically.
So the function takes a quick pause, but then just keeps going.
Exactly. Then we have jump discontinuities. These are a little more dramatic, like one of those bridges that suddenly lifts up in the middle of the road.
Oh.
The function abruptly jumps from one value to another at a particular point.
Okay, so we got tiny pauses and sudden leaps. What about those infinite discontinuities?
Yes, they happen at those vertical asymptotes we were talking about before. Remember how the graph approaches those vertical lines,
Right.
but never quite touches them?
Yeah.
Well, at an infinite discontinuity, the function heads straight towards positive or negative infinity. So it creates a really dramatic shift in the graph.
So the infinite discontinuity is like the road just ends.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is all starting to make sense.
Good.
I'm starting to really wrap my head around this.
And we can actually see these discontinuities when we graph these rational functions. It's a great way to make abstract concepts a little more concrete.
It is?
And visual.
Yeah, because sometimes those equations, they're just a bunch of letters and symbols.
Right.
But seeing them come to life on a graph is really cool.
And you can even make it a hands-on activity. Have your students sketch out the graph of a rational function, and then use different colors to highlight those different discontinuities. You can circle removable discontinuities, use dotted lines to show jumps, and then arrows to show those infinite discontinuities.
That's like tuning math into art.
There you go.
All right, so we've tackled those rational functions and those discontinuities.
We have.
What about those composite functions? I remember them being a little bit of a brain twister.
They can be, but they're also really powerful tools. Composite functions are all about combining functions. You apply one function to the output of another function. Kind of like those nesting dolls, you know? It's like a chain reaction where each function transforms the input, leading to a final, very unique output.
So it's a multi-step process.
Yeah.
With each function playing a role in shaping the final result.
Precisely. And the order that you apply those functions really matters. It's like getting dressed, you put on your socks before your shoes. Changing the order changes the outcome.
Yeah, definitely. Order matters when it comes to composite functions. And getting dressed. What else should we keep in mind?
Well, it's important to emphasize that the domain of that composite function is determined by the inner function. You have to make sure that the output of that inside function falls within the domain of the outside function. Like trying to fit a smaller box inside of a bigger box.
Gotcha.
That inner box can't be bigger than the outer box.
Okay, so order matters and domain is key. Is there anything else that tends to trip students up with composite functions?
Sometimes students get a little hung up on the notation, so encourage them to break it down, visualize the process step by step. They can even color code each function.
Oh, I love that.
To help them keep track.
Yeah, breaking it down visually can make such a difference. All right, so we've explored rational functions, discovered the world of discontinuities, and even unraveled those composite functions.
I really think we did.
What's next on our curved line adventure?
Well, now that we've explored the mechanics of these curves, it's time to delve into the beauty and the deeper meaning behind them.
Ooh, I like that. I feel like we've covered so much ground. We explored all those different types of functions and those fascinating discontinuities, even those composite functions. They felt like a real mathematical puzzle at first, but I'm really ready to zoom out now and see how all of this connects to the big picture, how these curves can help us understand life itself.
That's what's so amazing about math. It's not just about equations and graphs and formulas.
Right.
It's a language that can help us describe the world around us and even our own personal journeys. Remember that quote we started with by William McCall? Straight is the line of duty. Curved is the line of beauty.
Oh, yeah.
It's a beautiful reminder that sometimes the most beautiful paths, the most meaningful paths, are the ones that twist and turn in unexpected ways.
It makes me think about how we try to plan out our lives,
Mm-hmm.
expecting everything to go in a straight line. But life rarely works that way, does it? There are always detours.
Those detours, those
Yeah.
challenges, those unexpected turns, they're often what shape us. They make our journeys unique.
Right, right.
Think about those discontinuities we discussed in rational functions. Those jumps and gaps, they represent the unexpected events, the setbacks, the surprises, those moments that force us to change course in life.
So instead of fearing those disruptions, we can embrace them as opportunities to grow and learn.
Just like those asymptotes, remember those lines that the curve approaches but never quite reaches? We might have goals or aspirations in life that we're always striving for, knowing that we might never fully reach them.
Right.
But it's that pursuit, that continual striving that gives our lives meaning and purpose. And just like those polynomial functions
Yeah.
that have an end behavior, remember? That reveals their ultimate direction. Our lives, too, have a path, a trajectory, even if it's not always clear or predictable.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. It's not just about those formulas and those equations anymore, but it's about exploring the deeper meaning behind those curves and how they reflect the beauty and complexity of life itself.
And remember, teaching math, it's not about just memorizing facts and procedures. It's about nurturing curiosity, fostering critical thinking, encouraging your kids to see the connections between mathematics and the world around them.
And who knows? Maybe exploring these curved lines will inspire our students to embrace the curves in their own lives,
Yes.
to see those challenges as opportunities for growth, and to find beauty in the unexpected. I have to say, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of curved lines. We hope that you've gained some new insights, a renewed sense of wonder, and the confidence to go forth and teach this fascinating material.
That's right.
Until next time, happy homeschooling.